Have you ever wondered how technology like generative AI is reshaping the world of marketing, specifically in the realm of personalization? Well, today on Tech Talks Daily, I'm joined by Ravi Pal, and he is the global CTO of OgilvyOne, which is a Verticurl and WPP company. And with a career at the forefront of marketing technology services, Ravi brings deep insights into the opportunities and challenges that Gen AI presents in delivering tailored marketing that not only captures attention, but sustains it. So, big question, how can businesses leverage this technology to create those truly personalised experiences that resonate with their audiences? We're currently producing something like 30 to 35 episodes every single month, reaching around about 130 to 140,000 listeners around the world. So I wanted to mention the sponsor of Tech Talks Daily and also shine a light on how legacy managed file transfer tools are dated and lack the security that today's remote workforce demands. And companies that continue relying on that outdated technology put their sensitive data at risk. But the good news is you can ensure top-tier security with Kiteworks MFT suite. Their software security hardening includes an ongoing bounty program, regular penetration testing to minimize vulnerabilities, the convenience of a one-click appliance update, and avoid the hassle of managing multiple unhardened servers. Kiteworks is also FedRAMP moderate authorized. So step into the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks by visiting kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get started today. But enough rambling from me. Let's get today's guest on. Well, buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Singapore, where Ravi is waiting to join us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Ravi. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Neil, for having me on the show. My name is Ravi. I'm global CTO for OgilvyOne, based out of Singapore. Just about my profile. So I'm a mix of product engineering. I've built enough products in my life. A little bit of innovation streaks. I've built innovation labs, entrepreneurship, startups, and then, SI and the large consulting firms along with the digital flavor. So I've kind of done it all in my career. Currently in my present role, I do solve the pressing business problems that our clients are seeing, especially with the changing landscape, as you and I will talk about today. Work with our technology partners who are always innovating. So, how do we create new strategic capabilities together, offers together to solve those pressing, business problems for our clients. And I also oversee all the R&D for our company, wherein we create new assets, accelerators, and sometimes we create tools and products for better productivity, especially in the areas of emerging tech, so that we can advise our clients where these solutions might fit for solving their problems. So that'll be the summary of what I do.
Love it. And one of the reasons I invite you on the podcast today is every day we talk about how technology is transforming industries in ways you don't imagine. There's a lot of hype around AI right now. Everyone's talking about it. But also, I want to try and get away from the AI itself and understand, well, what impact is it having here? What problems are we solving? Now, at OgilvyOne, you design the brand, you turn the brand into an experience and help your customers communicate the brand story and make brands matter. But can you elaborate on exactly how Gen AI is transforming the landscape of personalized marketing, and also what kind of benefits can brands expect from effective implementation of this technology?
Oh, I think that's very beautifully put, very different from how usually I'm asked this question. So let me try and, I think for the listener, since it's audio only, try and put it in some sort of a visual perspective. Imagine on x-axis that as a marketeer, you are doing your day-to-day job on the left-hand side of the x-axis. And, you're trying to see if you had a new campaign idea, how do you evaluate it? So, you could go to a Gen AI engine today and ask for it some ideas around what do you want to achieve? I want to increase my customer acquisition. So what are the ideas I have, right? You could do that. So I call that, incremental day-to-day sort of improvement in how you communicate with your prospective customers. On the right-hand side of that x-axis, if you go to the extreme right, you're talking about customer-facing deployment of this technology. So you would hear a lot of stuff around, the service bots or service agents, where now taking advantage of natural language, you can have more natural conversations, more personalized conversations. But I think the true beauty of scale is that you can actually personalize every aspect, property of that communication that you're sending out to your customer or your consumer, depending on your B2C or B2B client. Think about it. The voice of the communication, the tonality of the text, the advertising banner, the creative on the page or the web page, the product description in the way Neil would like to see it, including the experience interaction itself. So we've reached a point where Gen AI could actually also become Gen UI. So you could kind of compose your experience in a way that, Neil and Ravi can experience the same page slightly differently in the way it'll be presented to us. So that's on that axis of, personalization on both sides. Now, if you take, let's say, a vertical axis and you said, hey, what about productivity use cases and transformative use cases, right? So in productivity, think about, we all have business workflows. So marketeers, you and I, you're recording this podcast, you may go through steps, multiple steps. What if you deployed some agents and those agents take each of these tasks and do those tasks very effectively for you? So we call that like a, efficiency by automating certain things using these agents with Gen AI skill. But when you go to transformative, where you're thinking about, I will actually transform my business for future readiness using Gen AI. In that construct, you have to think about, re-engineering your business process. You have to think about re-engineering your organizational construct. And for those things, you have to think about how the AI can be applied at scale. There are very few who've done it. OgilvyOne is part of WPP. WPP has a platform, we call it WPP Open. If your listeners search for it, they'll find some literature on it. What we've been able to do is take, the bits and pieces that I described in the other three pillars, and then turn it into this operating system of sorts, where if as a marketeer, you had invested in different technologies for experience management, for analytics management, for commerce management, for communication management, but you could then surface all of them up, tie them together with the power of data and AI, and then create this one uniform orchestration tool. That just has the power of transforming your business in a way, or, change the personalization communication with your customers in a way that you can't imagine. So if I'm able to probably visualize it for our listeners, I think that's the true, impact of the implementation of Gen AI that each one of us, including marketeers, can see.
I love that example, especially how we could both be looking at something that's very similar, but we have a personalized look at that. And I suppose in some ways, Gen AI is like a human. It does overuse certain words, though. And by that, I think delve, tapestry, vibrant, and landscape often get thrown up. So with Gen AI being widely adopted, what do you think are some of the big challenges that marketers face when it comes to integrating this technology into their existing workflows?
So I think we can look at challenges again in various lenses. So yeah. I'll try and keep it simple, but also something that, listeners can sort of, visualize and keep it with them. So there are, again, let's look at it in the people, process, data, and engineering sort of a lens. Sure. If you think about it, data is the soul for any AI, Gen AI or classic AI conversation. So you need to have right kind of data, real time. It should be available. It should be right quality. It should obviously not breach any compliance, privacy, etc. Right? But if you think about it, data conversation is not new, right? I mean, in early 2000, the first data mining company that I worked with, And we're sitting in 2024 and we are still talking about data challenges. And there are various reasons, some legit, some not so legit, right? So as an example, a client will implement a certain technology, for a different reason with their socio-political or organization structure. They might have the ownership of that technology with someone else. So you now by default created a data island. Then you have another technology. Then you might have centralized data and analytics team. So you have, by nature of our, complex organizations, whether we are on the service side or on the client side, we've created these data islands. So I think that remains a challenge, that how do you make this data available for you to create magic through emerging tech like AI? The second part of this challenge is, when we look at ChatGPT, and as a user, when we interact with it, we find it really simple. So sometimes we take that to be that's exactly how simple probably the implementation is going to be. But actually, you need to think about a lot more things than that. Every model has a version. Every model has a certain performance associated with it, KPIs associated with it. You need to make sure that you have an engineering team that kind of understands how the pipeline that brings data into the model, the pipeline that tunes that model, pipeline that evals that model can be implemented in your technology investment, because you're not going to suddenly say, I'm going to uproot all my existing investment and, bring a new technology. So you need to actually evaluate all of that. And then you start to get into the people process lens. The process would be, hey, can the existing approaches or delivery methodologies sufficient for AI? Because we don't know true ROI for most of our business processes if we were to, let's say, augment them with Gen AI, right? The cost to benefit ratio. So you've got to experiment. So how do you create the value stream based, the delivery models? But if you think from an IT standpoint, it can be very scary, right? I mean, you're bringing in a completely new technology, and you still want some sort of control, like for anything. If you have a cloud platform today, I want control over what's happening, who's logging in, what sort of data is being collected, what's the transparency that's available to me to make sure that I have assurance that nothing is being breached. Now we have a tool or a technology that can actually be a decision maker. Forget about it being just one of the tools that a user uses, right? So having those controls, the assurance, the telemetry that allows you to peek into what's happening at any given point in time remains a huge challenge. So we need to work with different clients, or marketeers have to work with their IT teams to make sure that the two teams can figure the answer out. And then finally, I think the governance challenge is well understood, right? The ethics, the privacy, the responsible use of AI, the bias, the grounding that is required to make sure anything that AI does, both sides, the customer as well as the marketeer, can trust it, because it's not, I'm using it, but when I explain it to my teams, I always explain it like a persona, because basically this technology is more than just being a slave, right? It has its own personality. It can sort of dream the dream and give you the answers, right? So it's a little more than the it. So therefore, I think the trust is very important, because it's going to do things that the previous technologies haven't done before. Slightly longish answer, but I've tried to marry the challenges with some of the practices or the solutions we need to look for between business and IT.
No, I'm glad you did. It really helps bring everything to life. And there's also an argument, we're all talking about AI on a daily basis, but not necessarily enough about data, because AI is useless without it. So how important is the quality, the availability and the accuracy of data for the success of Gen AI-driven marketing? And what steps can any marketer listening take to ensure that their data is up to standard?
Yeah. Again, brilliant question, right? So like you said, availability and accuracy are important. So Gen AI, as we understand, so I'll try and simplify first so that I can respond to that question, right? So it's a combination of whatever data has been fed and it's been encoded. So think of it as a worldview. Gen AI model has got a worldview based on all the data that has been fed into it. And now whatever you want it to do. You want it to answer your question or, create some sort of classification or segmentation or what have you. It is going to use that data set to respond to your query, right? So now, if that's the basis of what Gen AI is, then of course, like you said, the data becomes the soul for this engine, AI engine. Now, how and why this is important? So have a think that, let's say I'm going to use Gen AI, and it's an expensive technology, right? So let's be clear about it. So if I'm going to use it, I'm going to use it for things that are going to give me the right ROI. So as an example, if I wanted to use it for making some business decisions for me or augment making business decisions for me, if I need to do that, then I need to make sure that the data I provided to train, the context, the parameters, the weights, the biases, all the tuning and the attributes, the emphasis, we call them features in technology term, but the features that I emphasize, that how do you make the decision when I want you to, help me make the decision based on the situation I'll give you or the data set that I'll give you. You can't do that if you hadn't provided it the right data set from your company, your organization, your department lens, right? Similarly, if you were looking for better performance, and performance in this case is not the page performance that it happened in 1 second or 2 seconds or 3 seconds. The performance in this case is more about accuracy and, over a period of time, whether that accuracy degrades or improves, right? So that's performance in a very layman term in this case. So all the studies, if you look at the benchmarks, have proven that quality of data gives you better performance on an AI model than the quantity of data. So you don't want to just give it all sort of data. You want to make sure you feed it with the quality data so that you get the performant output. And then finally, I think the competitive advantage, right? So I'm kind of marrying your the other part of the question as part of the response as well. When I'm going to be doing the right data feed to it, whether it is my, let's say, campaign performance data that I have as an organization, or my first party data, or any other business transaction data that I have, then I'm creating an AI model that is my own, which understands my business, it understands my the past performance, and therefore it can help me predict the future. And it creates that, unique sort of an IP for you, and therefore a competitive advantage instead of just using, off the shelf, out of the box, something that, everybody else is using. So data is really the key. I think it's obvious, but I will add, so that it's not neglected. The compliance, the security, and the, the responsible use of data is equally important. So which means that you need to make sure where data needs to be anonymized, it is being anonymized. Wherever data needs to be not processed for, the obvious reasons like GDPR, etc., then you're going to not process that data. So that's equally important. It falls as part of this, the data question itself.
And another debate I'm hearing more and more about is custom AI models versus off-the-shelf solutions. To dig a little bit deeper on that, what would you say are the advantages of leveraging custom AI models over those off-the-shelf solutions? And how can this provide maybe a competitive edge for brands?
I always suggest in my conversations that, customizing an AI model should be your last resort, right? As a brand. Because of the cost associated with it, it's not simple that you turn up and you can create a custom AI model. But we'll get to that. I think it's an important question though. Yeah. There are 2-3 ways you can actually do customization without having to actually customizing the model. One is a pattern called RAG pattern, which is retrieval augmentation generation pattern. So basically, you're not fine-tuning the model itself. You're taking advantage of the, let's say, off-the-shelf or foundation model that you either with proprietary data or with one of the cloud providers or what have you. And then you're augmenting it with your company's specific data. So let's say search is a use case that you want to implement, right? Or, customer service bot use case you want to implement. The most important scenario there is that you want the answer to be grounded in your data and not some, internet scraped data. So that RAG pattern very nicely, without having for you to, spend a lot of cost in fine tuning the model, can solve that problem. So that's one way you can sort of use the customized pattern in AI scenario. The other is the AI agents, which are, you can create an army of agents. Think about, a lot of your workers who are, sort of doing a specific task for you. They're skilled with, or they're given a specific tool to do summarization, as an example, or go and find a particular thing, or go in the background and do the analysis for you, and then only present the report back to you, right? So that's another way you could do some tasks without really doing the fine tuning. But if we get to the specific question that you've asked, there are legit reasons when you would actually fine tune, or as you're calling it, customize a Gen AI model, which is that, like you said, when you have a business specific use case, like you've got tons of your own campaign performance data from past, from media campaigns or communication campaigns, you want to take advantage of that and then create your own brand voice, let's say a Gen AI model, so that you can generate your specific brand creative. You want to be compliant to your brand, attributes or purpose, so to say, right? So you don't necessarily break the brand compliance. Or you have a domain specific understanding. So your lexicon has to be the same as, you or your business uses. So there are genuine reasons when you will want to create the customization. And when you do that, and for the reasons that I said, the advantages you will have is now you have something that you created as your IP. So now you can call it your own technology tool. B, you're not producing something that everybody else is producing. So if you and I go on, let's say the Gemini and start to create a new creative image or create a new brief, both of us are probably going to get similar answers, slightly random, but similar answer. But now that you've tuned your own model with your own creative from past or your own campaign performance, you're going to get your specific output. So you're not going to have the sameness as any other brand. So you're going to look unique. You will be differentiated. You will be talking to your customer with your specific brand purpose voice and that and that uniqueness that you created. And then finally, I think the most important thing, like I kind of called out in the previous questions and response, is the performance of your model. So if you're using something generic, it is going to give you vague answers because there is no grounding. You do not know what is the basis of its worldview that it is going to respond to you with. But with the fine-tuned, wherein you have the ability to control the temperature, the weights, the biases, the tuning, etc., you can actually create something which is very, very specific to your department, your organization. So you don't have to worry about whether it is going to give me, made up fact, or it is going to give me some competitors' data because it was trained on something. So you can avoid all of those pitfalls and have a very performant model, which then allows you to do the personalization for your customers or do productivity efficiency for your marketeers in your own specific way. So that's the advantage of doing the custom AI models.
And a few years ago, digital assistants, or the rise of them and everybody using those voice assistants, many warned the dangers of actually handing over the voice of your brand to Alexa, Siri or Google, etc. But now I'm seeing those same concerns being voiced with the use of AI, especially if everyone's using that same generic language that you can very often spot. So how can brands balance the efficiency of AI, but also maintaining that unique voice and customer connection to avoid that, losing that voice?
Again, fantastic question. So I want to answer that a little bit with selfish interest. So this is the problem we also faced because we're as a services organization, we are also going through the same disruption that everybody else is going through. That how does AI change our job? And as we consult, as you talked about, right, we consult with brands, we help them create unique experiences, create that bond, design that relationship with their customers and consumers with the brand, which is unique, right? Now, when we were thinking about how we will use AI, and how our method or our approach changes, that allows us and so successfully in past years to create these unique relationship bonds between our clients and their customers. We sort of looked back at our own foundational methodology. We call it relationship design, and we said actually all of these answers exist in that relationship design methodology. What it is actually 4 different lenses with which we examine a problem or a business imperative. Those are brand, business, customer, consumer, and the technology and data. So we always look at all the problems that we're trying to solve with these 4 lenses. This allows us, even if, Ravi and, Neil are looking at the same problem, this allows us to have divergent views, because the way you may interpret data may be very different as I would. The way you will look at customer segments would be different. But at the same time, because we are combining them with, customer and the business ecosystem data, the brand's purpose, and all the data that you might have collected, business or the consumer data or transactional data or behavioral data, you obviously are going to come back with very different, divergent, integrated views that will automatically create a unique perspective. So this methodology, obviously there's a lot of detail behind this methodology, but this allows us to create that unique blend of outputs. And that's something we are codifying in our day-to-day working. That's something that we're codifying into an actually AI-driven tool. And we are seeing the output that, we're able to keep that human creativity, the potential that humans have, the ingenuity that humans have, along with the efficiency and the scale that the Gen AI can give us. That's how I will respond to it. I'm sure different clients will find their own method or approach, which might be giving them a similar sort of an output. But I find the relationship design very, very productive and useful to sort of solve this challenge of sameness or sea of sameness.
And I just feel that we're in somewhat of a learning phase at the moment and trying to work out what will work, what won't work. And given that so many workers are interested in learning more about AI, are there any strategies that you'd recommend for organizations to invest in AI education and train staff across all levels of the organization and ensure that everyone moves forward together and we don't leave anyone behind? Any strategies around that and getting everybody on board?
I'm going to give you a summary of what I've been through in last year, what our organization been through in last year.
Yeah.
And therefore, people can learn from our, what we think actually works. Like any other learning, you have to have a tiered approach to learning AI as well. What that means is that not everybody would have the same use. Some will be advanced users. Some would be, some would remain, let's say, basic users of the AI technology. And that also depends on the function they are part of, number one. Number two, when you start, you want to start with foundational elements, which are same for everybody. And foundationals are like, understanding this technology without being, geeky or nerdy, but understanding it enough to see what are the challenges it brings, as well as what are the advantages it brings, so that you don't have the fear of unknown. Because most of the resistance comes from that fear of unknown in the organization. The third aspect is that once everybody's gone that foundational learning, you want to start to do purpose-driven training, which is to say, let's say in an organization, you have a business analyst, you have someone who manages your data analyst, you have an engineer who does coding, you have a manager who is looking at, let's say, the dashboards and metrics, etc. And then you can, keep going through the hierarchy. Each one of them will have a very different problem they will solve in their day-to-day work. How they use the AI tool for productivity, solving something as simple as doing competitive research, doing summarization of hundreds of documents that they might receive, writing some user stories with, steps that can be auto-generated with the productivity and so forth and so on, right? So each one of them will look at it differently. A coder will look at it very differently. So we need to have that purpose-driven as you go along in the journey of learning. And eventually each one of them will get to a point where they will start to do cross learning. What that means is that a BA will then understand the power that actually I can now be a coder, because now I can use this tool to say, hey, write me a script, a JavaScript or a Python script for me to automate something. And then they will be able to actually deploy that by asking that, how do I deploy it in my environment? And then that's when you will be able to unlock the true productivity from the learning. But more importantly, you will start to develop new skills in individuals. That I will caveat with, the expertise will not be replaced. So a creative will know exactly what's the right creative. If I go there and I generate an image and I do product placement in a certain way, that doesn't mean I actually understand what's the right creative, right? So the expertise is never getting replaced, but I can actually try and I don't have to now wait for someone. If I was doing a POC, I can actually go and generate something on my own, right? So that becomes important. But having said that, so this is what we've learned, and it has worked for us, and especially at WPP, we've done a massive educational program with the tools that we made available. But one thing that worked best for us was that the tools that we built, the investment we made, we took away all the fundamental challenges. So as an example, if we made the Creative Studio, that is one of the tools available to everyone, we took care of, challenges like, confidentiality, bias, toxic content, etc., so that, you don't have to deal with it in day to day. So, that is actually equally important, because when you expose such a large, if you've got thousands of your workforce suddenly learning that, you do not want to every day get into a new challenge. Somebody gets exposed to toxic content, or somebody's, doing drift with, getting exposed to drift on the model and, writing a song or what have you, right? So you want to keep certain controls over what kind of content is being produced. So I think that's something that we learned, that was one of the reasons why we could freely distribute the tool at such a large scale for people to experiment. But that's, I think, the simplistic way, but hopefully that gives people an idea that, how they can go about creating the training or learning programs in their organizations.
And in the past, we've seen when marketers maybe pick up the wrong image of someone, or a person, a celebrity, or a business leader, or a location on Google Images, and there's a huge amount of embarrassment that happens from that. But of course, fast forward to present day, it's all about AI hallucination. So how can marketers ensure transparency and explainability in their use of Gen AI, particularly in terms of understanding and trusting some of those outputs that are provided by these systems?
Actually, the answer is in the question that you're asking, but I'll try and elaborate. So I think we discussed trust sometime earlier in this conversation. Think about a situation where a marketer deploys AI, and this AI is sort of, recommending vouchers or discounts to Neil and Ravi. Yeah. And suddenly you learn that it has started to distribute 60% discount to everybody who comes and interacts with it. Right? That'll be a huge, break of trust, because that's not how it is supposed to function. So then what do you do? Right? So that's a very legit question everybody's asking, right? So one of the things, like you said, XAI, right? So there are techniques like explainable AI. So when we are implementing AI, we need to make sure that we implement it with these techniques that are available. Some of them are LIME, LIME, and SHAP. So those techniques are available. But you need to cap it with a couple of additional things. One, that you need to make sure that in production, there is enough telemetry and transparency that you are auditing on a regular basis, that, how is this AI making decision, which part of it will come from explainable AI, but part of it has to come with, the audit that the AI tool has to generate, and then you have to review like any other, data audit. Then you want to make sure that you have documented your data sources. You've documented the architecture that you use to train this AI, and then make sure that is reviewed through a governance process. And that governance process can actually call out early enough if there are any gaps, whether in the way you are implementing the architecture, which could lead to an issue like this, wherein, AI just starts to make some random decisions, or it could avoid, if it is going to create some biased output, if let's say you're generating some creative, or it avoids, some sort of data breach because, in past we've seen somebody uploaded a document and then, one of the AI engine actually verbatim cited the same document. So you want to avoid all of those, right? So in between these three things, if we do them right, I think we can avoid creating this trust deficit. There is one other thing that is emerging now. It's not very prevalent, but I think it'll be good for your listeners, especially the ones who are implementing AI. As we were building software in the past, right, we created some best practices. We call them extreme programming practices or different terminologies and things like unit testing, where whatever we wrote, we tested before, it was even sent to quality assurance teams, etc. For AI as well, the techniques are available. They are not well known. So there's a technique called eval. So as you are implementing AI step by step through your, let's call it AI as DLC, then you should be implementing eval as part of your methodology of development. It should not be an afterthought for an AI engineer or an AI scientist. If we do that right, I think you can avoid a lot of these challenges at the later stage. So I think that's one tip I leave anybody who will be interested in exploring the eval technique, especially in their development methodology.
And despite the constant delays, we must talk, of course, about the death of third-party cookies. And unlike third-party data that's shared among companies, first-party data is unique to your business and something that's rising in importance. And ultimately, of course, for anyone outside of the marketing space, it is the information you own and collect directly from consumers, maybe through your app or website interactions, as well as emails and loyalty programs, etc. But with all that in mind, what role does first-party data play, do you think, in creating effective personalized marketing campaigns when using Gen AI? And how can brands maybe better leverage this data after spending too long addicted to the third-party data?
Yeah. Now, isn't it interesting, right? So a couple of years ago, we were all worried about, hey, third-party cookies are going, how are we going to do certain things that we are so used to doing as marketers? And then here comes AI. And then, the question changes from saying, so what can my data do now, right? Because I'm sitting on, and a lot of brands are sitting on treasure trove of data. There is a lot of data. And a lot of the time clients tell me, we've got too much data, but we don't know what to do with it, right? And I think the Gen AI, and I'm going to actually add a caveat to it, and AI together solves that problem. I don't think Gen AI alone can solve all the problems, but we need to look at the predictive AI. We need to look at the classic AI methods as well, the broader data science as well. A combination of that becomes very powerful. So as in the previous section we were discussing, right? If I'm fine tuning a model, I need to use my own data, which is my first party data or my business data, what have you, and that allows me to create that unique competitive advantage. That also allows me to generate content if I'm using Gen AI, or personalize something at a very different scale. And AI can operate at a scale that we couldn't earlier from a personalization standpoint. So that becomes hugely valuable, right? But what I would add to that is that while, we have all the marketeers and most of our clients have some system where all of this data is sitting. So marketing organization today has customer data platforms where they brought in a lot of marketing related data, put it in one single system. Some clients have what we call composable data platforms where, all the business data and other, cross-discipline data are also stored. So you can kind of do better data science models. But either model that you're sitting on or either data platform that you're sitting on, I think the important thing would be if you look at the left-hand side of this data that you're sitting on, which is, let's say, the media, which is the customer acquisition side, and you're spending a lot of effort and time in doing media campaigns, it is imperative that you bring whatever data you can bring from your ad partner, third party, over back into your CDPs, composable or otherwise. And therefore, that allows you to then look at the additional dimension of whether you're bringing in LinkedIn data or Facebook data. It allows you to see your data with different feature attributes and starts you to think about, can I create a new ML model or new data science model that gives me a different insight, a unique insight? So that's one aspect of it on top of your first party data. Without first party data, none of this is useful, because first party data is actually going to give you that unique identifier in terms of having that personalized conversation with your customer. On the right hand side, using personalized or first party data, you are doing at scale personalization. So you're sending out communications, you're serving a personalized product description page or information on your website. Now, feedback from all of those analytics or streams of analytics coming back into your CDP, and then allowing you to do this three-way enrichment of data to then think about new ML models. That's actually where you start to unlock the true power of data. So in short, the first party data is very important. The data that you're sitting on is really the core engine with which you can drive your AI initiatives. But don't forget to sort of connect the dots between feedback loop as well as, the performance data that you can get from other sources for you to create new segments and new insights.
Fantastic advice. And you've shared so many golden insights today. And I'm going to be greedy here and say, before I let you go, I'm going to ask you to leave one final gift for everyone listening. We have an Amazon wish list where I ask my guests to share a book that they'd recommend or means something to them. So what book would you like to add to our wish list?
I'm going to actually go slightly. I mean, it's actually relevant, but it's not. Yeah. It's not directly linked to AI topic that we're discussing. We engineers, and I consider myself a technology product engineer at heart, we're so used to looking at the world through that, the matrix, if you can imagine, the movie, right? So the bits, the bytes. To have a different perspective or explore a different dimension, you need to sometimes read stuff that gives you new dimensions or parallel universe, so to say, for you to, let's say, imagine possibilities with technology. So there are two books actually that opened that perspective for me. The first one was the Sorcerers and Their Apprentice. I think it is by Frank Moss. He was the MIT media director. And what he did was he sort of codified all his experiences and experiments. And, in the digital era, MIT Media Lab was this magical thing. They were doing things that nobody else was able to do. And what was fascinating reading through that book was that, how do you innovate? Because all of us are, in day to day, so stuck with the same processes, same sort of, technology and tools. Then, where is that one thing that you should change that will allow you to innovate? So that has got some real knowledge nuggets that can open up that perspective for you without having to change any, substantive or fundamental things in the way you operate. And that was very useful, and it's relevant because I was building a innovation lab when I found that book, and I was experimenting myself and trying to figure out, is process the reason for innovation? Are people the catalyst to innovation, or the tools and technology that pushes the envelope? And you find that actually either of them can change the output. So one of my favorite examples from that book, Neil, I'm probably giving you a longer answer, but one of the favorite example is when they were designing a car for the city, they actually got an environment engineer in the core team to design the car, not an automobile engineer, to sort of give a different perspective. The second book I'm going to recommend is Enchanted Objects. I forget who the author is now, but Enchanted Object also gives you a new portal of sorts, right? It allows you to imagine use of technology through the lens of magic. If you're familiar with Chronicles of Narnia or Harry Potter world or what have you, that book allows you to imagine how VR could be used to open new portals for you to experience, new let's say information gateways or information star gateways or whatever you want to call it. But they kind of give you a new perspective if you're a technologist or a marketeer, and then you're struggling with how do I use the technology or new technology in a magical way. So those are the two books I would recommend. I think they're fantastic books.
Fantastic. I'll get both of those books added to the Amazon wish list. And for yourself, if anyone wants to maybe connect with you on LinkedIn, find out more information about Ogilvy or anything we talked about today, where would you like to point everyone listening?
So as an individual, I'm more active on X, which is, formerly known as Twitter. So you can find me as Ravi Pal, RAVIPL 1214. That's my handle. But otherwise, for all business, formal conversation, OgilvyOne or otherwise, just find me on LinkedIn. You can search me with Ravi Pal, OgilvyOne, you'll find me.
Excellent. Well, I'll add links to everything there. I love chatting with you today. A big message there around how Gen AI can produce those personalized marketing that brands are coveting, but also what customers expect. And there's so many big talking points around that. And I'd invite everyone listening to let me know their thoughts. But more than anything, just thank you for bringing this topic to life today, Ravi. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Neil. Thank you for having me.
I think talking about how strategic, personalized implementations can significantly enhance things like customer engagement and brand loyalty opens up so many different opportunities. And as we wrap up the show today, remember that integrating the technologies that we've talked about today isn't just about adopting new tools, but it's also about evolving with them, creating meaningful and impactful customer interactions, bringing your staff along for the ride as well, ensuring everybody understands the technology. But what changes do you see Gen AI bringing to your marketing strategy? Please join the conversation by emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Love to hear your thoughts on this one. I will be back bright and early tomorrow, so let me know your thoughts. But that is it for today. So thanks for listening as always, gang, and until next time, don't be a stranger.